probably England fans have had enough of being nearly men.
The right back position is going to change in the next year.
Did Declan Rice produce his best football this tournament? Did Harry Kane get anywhere near the levels? I really don't think they did. Hello and welcome back to Monday Vibes, everybody. It didn't come home, sadly, but look who has appeared on our screens once again. It's Mikey McCubbin joining me, Doogie Critchley. Mikey, how are you doing? Reflections, sad night, wasn't it?
Yeah, sad night. I mean, obviously England came into the final as clear underdogs, but it still didn't make it any easier. It was just, it was a sad evening. I think it's just the story of the last 6 years. You know, it felt like maybe there was going to be, maybe it was written, given the way that England came through this tournament in kind of, just with moments of brilliance, just pure clutch, not playing particularly well, but it felt like, it might have happened again, and especially after Cole Palmer's brilliant equaliser, just minutes after coming off the bench, that there was a sense, wasn't there? But it just England weren't good enough, were they? Throughout the tournament they weren't really good enough, and made it there, and then coming up against probably one of the best international teams we've seen in terms of their structure, in terms of the way they play, the way that they were able to, take off, arguably their best player at half time, and come out looking even better, with Zubamendi on the field. You do just have to hand it to Spain, but for Southgate, you just feel for him so much, don't you? 2 finals, both times just didn't quite make the grade. And I guess there are question marks now as to what he's got a big decision on his hands, whether he wants to take this team to 2026, or whether he feels like he's done all he can. Yeah, absolutely. It did feel like we were just sort of second best all over the pitch, really. I think we were sort of cheering every tackle and every block and every interception from about minute 3. It really was like that.
It was really backs against the walls from the get-go. And look, like England,
that was probably the game plan, right?
Yeah, for sure. We weren't gonna outplay Spain. Look, Spain have beaten Italy, Croatia, France, Germany, and now England. They've beaten every European side that has ever won a World Cup this tournament.
That's mad.
And they've beaten Croatia, who reached the 2018 World Cup final, of course. And look, they've been the best side in the tournament. They've scored 15 goals. That's 4 more than any other side. Next most was Germany, who scored 5 of those goals in their opening game against Scotland. I think they played the best football in this tournament. They've come up against adversity, conceding in the final minute of normal time against Germany, conceding in the final minute they conceded first against France as well.
Conceded first against Georgia.
Had to deal with England equalising yesterday and just turned it back on again. And it felt like the first half was pretty even. It was actually quite a dull watch, but I don't think anyone really wanted to admit it. It was a really ugly half of football, really. I think Luke Shaw was absolutely superb in that first half. I thought he was amazing. But second half, they just came out and just created that moment. Lamine Yamal finally getting the best of Shaw, setting up Nico Williams, and their winning goal is pretty special as well. But I will come on to Spain in due course, because it is worth just focusing on England and Southgate, because it is frustrating. I do understand everyone's anger at times, and I do understand everyone's just sort of sadness today. But I think we were beaten by the better side, and you might want to blame Southgate, you might want to blame the slight inhibition that we play with in big moments, the fact that we haven't really put together a 90-minute performance in this whole tournament, despite a very favourable run to the final. But I also think the players have to take a fair amount of looking at themselves as well. Did Declan Rice produce his best football this tournament? Did Harry Kane get anywhere near the levels? I really don't think they did. Did John Stones, potentially operate the same level he has in previous tournaments? Aside from Mark Gehi and a couple of moments from Saka, Bellingham and Foden had some bright spots as well, and Kobe Mainoo as well, definitely. He was really pretty below par by pretty much every England player. Kyle Walker, really experienced player as well. Nowhere near his best this tournament. And we needed everything to go perfectly right against Spain to have a chance, and it just felt like once again we were slightly inhibited by, to be honest, Harry Kane's performance. I just don't think was anywhere near the level, and it's a pretty damning stat that he's had 1 touch in the box in both huge in both these final against Italy and Spain. And yeah, you can point to the fact that he didn't have runners beyond him. But I just thought he looked really lackluster. I thought he looked lethargic. He just looked about 30% fit. And it did come and really affect England's play.
For sure. I think throughout this tournament, I think Kane, there's been, there's the classic kind of, pretty reductive, like not particularly intelligent kind of criticism of, oh, well, he's our striker, so he should be in the box. It's like, well, not necessarily. Like, we've seen, how multifaceted his game is, but the problem is that when he's been coming deep throughout this tournament, he just hasn't been effective enough. Like Harry Kane, an on-form Harry Kane, comes deep and he dictates the way that the attack functions, and he just didn't do that this tournament, really. It was really left up to Saka, really, to do that ball progression between midfield and attack. Kobbie Mainoo at times as well. Jude Bellingham in this game, who I think Jude Bellingham performed very admirably actually in this game. He was really kind of just trying to take it by the scruff of the neck as much as possible in the second half, especially
playing out of position on the left wing.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
Do you think? It's easy to say in hindsight. Do you think Southgate should have stuck with the 3-4-3, or do you think that would have made us even more overrun in midfield?
It's a difficult one, because I think the plan worked in the first half, didn't it? Like, it was boring. It was a tough watch, and Spain probably weren't playing, at their best in that first half at all. Like, but England did frustrate Spain. Like there were so many, aimless balls into the box, flying wide as a result of England just packing the box and, just like holding down Nico Williams and Yamal essentially in that first half. So I don't know if you can blame the shape too much, but I just think the defensive structure went out the window to start the second half, and that was what won the game for Spain in the end. To be honest, say what you want about the final 10 minutes and the reaction to it going 1-1, which, yes, England probably weren't proactive enough in following that up and jumping on a fairly unsettled Spain after that Cole Palmer goal. It only really took 5 or 6 minutes for Spain to kind of reassert their dominance, but really it was the start of that second half, I think. How no one's on Nico Williams there. I think, Kyle Walker for both goals, his right-hand side, his area is just not marshalled well enough. Like that's the fact of the matter. And the fact of the matter as well is I think this is Kyle Walker's last major tournament, isn't it? Let's face it. And it brings about a lot of questions about what, there are some big calls to make now in the next couple of years. And I think it does start with, I don't want to just only dig him out, but given where he's at in his career, given his age, like the right back position is going to change in the next year, and I think that's going to change. That's going to dictate the way that the system changes for England as well, because I think the outstanding candidate to take that right back slot is Trent Alexander-Arnold. Such a different player to Kyle Walker. Kyle Walker's been there as our kind of safety net for years. He wasn't a safety net really in this tournament, aside from against the Netherlands.
And poor on the ball.
Poor on the ball as well. And yeah, I think it's potentially exciting to have, to bring Trent in, and potentially, that will usher in a more attacking era of football for England. You would hope. But yeah, so. Sorry, I digress about that, but yeah, ultimately it was in that first 10 minutes in the second half. Danny Olmo probably should score, and then the game's put to bed. Like, it probably should have been.
Yamal had a big chance as well.
Yeah, Yamal had 2 decent chances. Pickford, although criticised for his kind of distribution yesterday, was great shot stopping wise. He the amount of crosses he claimed as well, like. But Spain really should have been 2-0 up by 60 minutes, and then it's game over. And yeah, I don't really know what else there is to say.
There's not much to add on England. I think I might as well just give a little bit more credit to Spain.
Yeah.
I've already talked about the calibre of opponents they beat, but no one really had them amongst the 2-3 favourites for this tournament. I think mainly due to the age profile of some of those players. Yamal and Nico Williams relatively new to the international scene. This was Nico Williams' second international tournament, but he was a bit part player in Qatar. This was definitely Lamine Yamal's first, of course. I don't think people expected him to finish the tournament with 1 goal and 4 assists. It was one of the most remarkable individual tournaments, and I'm really surprised he didn't win player of the tournament, to be totally honest. So I mean, neither of us, I don't think, had Rodri in our team in the tournament.
Fabian Ruiz was very much our pick.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit harsh, but fair play to Rodri. He's a brilliant player as well. But they completely dominated this game. I think by half time the XG in the entire game was about 0.5, but Spain ended up with 2.3 to their name. So they really did turn it on in the second half, and England finished with 0.6. Spain creating 2.1 XG in the second half alone. That is very, very one-sided. And you look at some of the key performers in this game as well. Yamal and Williams, of course, but Oyarzabal had a great moment, obviously scoring the winning goal in the European final. He missed, 45 games with a cruciate ligament injury 2 years ago, missed the World Cup. That's a huge moment for him. Has probably maybe not kicked on to the level that people expected when he was breaking through at Real Sociedad a few years ago, but what a performance for coming off the bench here. And Marc Cucurella as well. Pre-tournament, everyone was thinking, I certainly was, Alex Grimaldo could really be a sort of, that launches him to a sort of global fandom level, a la Yamal. But Cucurella was brilliant all tournament and provides a brilliant ball in for that winning goal as well. And yes, they didn't maybe have the star quality of that 2008 to 2012 side, but I do think, as we've discussed in recent weeks, they might be more entertaining. Spain won every knockout game in the 2010 World Cup 1-0. This Spain side have provided far more entertainment, I think, and against arguably tougher opposition as well in the last 3 rounds. So huge credit. And Luis de la Fuente as well. No one expected anything from him going into this tournament, but he showed the benefit of being a FA man, really, a la Southgate, but it came off for him. He's got so much experience with this young crop of players. His under-19 side that he won the Euros with in 2015 had Rodri, Mikel Merino and Unai Simon in. He then did the same thing with the under-21s in 2019. That included Oyarzabal, Merino, Olmo and Fabian Ruiz. Who expected Fabian Ruiz to be one of the players of the tournament? Who expected Yamal to perform at this level already? And I was reading an Athletic article this morning about the inside story about their journey to this World Cup final and the work behind the scenes of someone like Alvaro Morata, who is apparently the most loved player in that Spanish dressing room. Such a good teammate, really inspires his teammates, always has the right thing to say at the right time. Huge credit to him. I think he's been much maligned throughout his career. Yes, he only scored 1 goal in this Euros, but I think he led from the front really effectively, and clearly brought the team together off the pitch as well. The big question on everyone's lips today, Mikey, is, I suppose, the future of Gareth Southgate.
Yep.
Do you think that the time has come for a change? And I suppose we should probably go through some candidates, if so.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, in some ways, it's useless us kind of giving our opinion on whether, it's in Southgate's hands, isn't it? The FA have said that they want him to stay on till the 26 World Cup. My feeling is that Southgate may well feel that this is a logical time. This is the time to do it. He didn't extend his contract beyond the end of this year, and it's a sad one to say, because it is, he's given us so many amazing memories. Even last night, you came over, Dukes, with a ton of the old FD boys, and as much criticism as he has rightly got for some of his choices this summer, they still did it. They still got to a final, and they still gave us that. They still gave us that. There's something still amazing about nearly doing it.
Yeah.
There's something quite amazing still about nearly doing it, because you give millions of people the right to dream. So I don't know, I'm getting all kind of schmaltzy about it, but you do have to give you have to give him huge you do have to give him huge respect. You heard Jude Bellingham talking about him after the game, about the way that he's become a friend to him. He's become someone who he can open up to, and he has done something pretty remarkable given where England were in 2016, in terms of what he's done. But it does feel like maybe the time has come, and it's not just Southgate. It's the entire system. It's the entire kind of coaching team and everything. They all have to take bear responsibility for the way that England have played in this tournament, and it's not so much throwing shade on Southgate and the coaching staff, but it is, you look at Spain and it feels like Spain have now set the standard for what an international team can be. To win 7 games in a row so convincingly, and it's not just Spain. Look at Germany under Nagelsmann. Clearly a great tactician, and how good they were. They probably make the final if they don't come up against Spain in the quarters. There is potentially a new standard, and there is, the kind of talk that has been, or the kind of conversation that has arisen from this Euros is whether we are going to see a more attacking, more high pressing kind of brand of international football take hold now that we've seen kind of Spain's what Spain have been able to do, what De La Fuente's been able to do. It could be quite if not revolutionary, but kind of an evolutionary thing in international football. And you think, is Southgate really capable of matching up to that? The evidence is maybe not. And that's not to say that England have to bring in like a Pep style manager, but someone with maybe some new ideas for a side which is going to be transitioning a little bit in the next couple of years, certainly over the next 5 or 6 years. I don't think would be the worst thing. And they would be taking over a setup which has been left in great condition by Southgate.
They've got all the building blocks.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't know. Ultimately, it's I think if he feels like he can do it, like the next 2 years, then I don't think it's going to like hurt England in the long run. But I feel like if I was Southgate, I think I'd have had enough. He spoke very. Yeah, 8 years is a long time, and he's spoken very openly about how he has been affected by the criticism, and and he's always been quite open about his kind of emotions being England manager. I would be minded to call it a day if I think.
Yeah, I think before the 2022 World Cup, he was really hurt by that Hungary game, which I think was played at Molineux, and the team was quite widely booed, and he said that really affected him at the time. And then, of course, he got a couple of beers thrown at him during this tournament by a very small minority, it might add, of England fans. And it did feel like match-going England fans were getting pretty frustrated, probably for the first time in his tenure. England have had enough of, which, rightly or wrongly, England fans have had enough of being nearly men. We are pretty desperate to get over the line now. And I do think most England match-going fans have really stuck by him loyally, but it did feel like it was on the precipice. When England was struggling against Slovakia, when they were drawing against Slovenia, England didn't really play that well this tournament, to be totally honest. I think they probably played the weakest they've ever played in a tournament under Southgate in some respects. Maybe slightly better than 2018, but not by a lot. No. But either way, let's get into some of the candidates, because what I would say about Southgate is I'd personally like a change, mainly for him really, and also the team. But the be careful what you wish for, having looked through these options, to be totally honest. I mean, let's talk about them. Graham Potter, first of all.
Yeah.
15th, 16th, 9th with Brighton. That deserves respect, because Brighton had only just come up and stabilised themselves in the Premier League under Chris Hughton. But they were never really known, that Brighton side, as being big goal scorers. I think in this final year where they did finish 9th, they scored 42 league goals in 38 games. Is that the sort of a guarantee of an evolution tactically and attacking wise? I'm not so sure. Only obviously lasted about 31 games at Chelsea, winning 12. That was a really difficult squad. It was a really difficult time for Chelsea. They had over 30 first team players. People were getting changed in the corridors. It was all a mess, to be totally honest. I'm not sure that should mean that he's not suitable for England, but I don't think it would necessarily mean... I don't think Graham Potter's the sort of appointment right now that would make me go, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And we go through some of these options, like would Eddie Howe want it? I'd be very surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Eddie Howe, what you do get with him is the hope of pressing football.
He's kind of what England wants.
Yeah, in terms stylistically, for sure. Like in terms of a team that plays fast, plays direct, but has the technical chops, like has the off the ball work. Stylistically, Eddie Howe does seem good, and I think character-wise, he seems good. He's got a great coaching team. Eddie Howe does, and he's always been earmarked, hasn't he, Eddie Howe as well? And I guess, coming into the job off the back of what he's done at Newcastle is there's momentum there. There's
very different way
there's quick. The public can get behind him very quickly. Whereas with Potter, it's a bit of a difficult one. But then you look at when Southgate came in, he wasn't particularly fancied at all. He was seen as a very uninspiring choice, and Graham Potter, character-wise, is pretty similar to Southgate. He's a real manager. He's a real kind of holistic coach in terms of every single aspect. Getting the players to do an opera or whatever. He's proper proper team building exercise guy. But he is also he, as we saw at Brighton, he's also a great tactician as well. But I agree, Diggs. It would be a risk in many respects. We've got a few others down here. I think we have to look at Lee Carsley and Steve Cooper as well, given their success with England at youth level. Of course, Lee Carsley winning the Euros last year with the under-21s, beating Spain. And in fact, Steve Cooper beating Spain in the under-17 World Cup final, in which Phil Foden and Mark Gehi scored. Conor Gallagher also made it onto the pitch. I mean, this is all the way back in 2017, but he's familiar with some of those players. He's known them since a young age.
Bad timing though.
Sorry?
Bad
timing. Yeah, just taking the Leicester job. Just taking over the Leicester job.
I mean, Lee Carsley as well, it's a huge step up for a guy that's got no experience at club level, although Southgate doesn't really, and it didn't hold him back too much. Lee Carsley, played a very entertaining brand of football despite lining up in a sort of old school 4-4-2. I think it was Curtis Jones and was it Angel Gomez in the centre of the park. Anthony Gordon playing as a sort of central striker, played really well in that tournament. The thing that might count against Steve Cooper in particular is the fact he's Welsh. Do England, having made such great strides and really got so close to glory under an Englishman, and the kind of reconnection that's brought with the national side, want to go down a foreign route, even though Welsh is of course part of Britain, but it's still a pretty fierce rivalry. And I suppose that comes into account when you discuss someone like Mauricio Pochettino, who I think is probably the outstanding manager out of work right now in terms of one that probably would take over England. Like Thomas Tuchel, I just don't see him taking the England job. Jurgen Klopp, I don't see him taking the England job. Like we could discuss them, but it's futile really. Whereas someone like Pochettino, that feels like a pretty good job for Pochettino. But would the England FA go down that route? I really like Pochettino as a developer of young talent. I think he got that Chelsea squad playing much better football towards the end of last season. I think he was really unfortunate to lose his job. I really like Pochettino as a fit. Personally, it doesn't really bother me the fact he's Argentinian. It really doesn't. I think with this crop of talent, which we have kind of widely talked about, and I do kind of agree is probably our best in 20 years, is it just the time to get the best manager available? Would he do a better job than Graham Potter? And I think it might come down to between those two if Eddie Howe's not willing to accept it. I think he probably would. And I really have no issue with the fact he's Argentinian, but I know lots of people in the comments, you might have an issue with that.
Yeah. Not necessarily, but I think it would just take a bit of getting used to. I think the what was special about Southgate was it was just the story, wasn't it? It was the story. He'd been there. He had been there, and he knew what it felt like, and that was what and in some ways it was written that he wouldn't quite get over the line as manager as well. Like maybe that was meant to be, but I think not having someone who doesn't, there's something about getting it. There's something about like knowing the pain. Not that Pochettino, that Pochettino knows all about pain as well. He's been through plenty of pain as a manager, and is great. And would no doubt get on really well with the players. He's very charismatic. He's
Harry Kane.
He's well liked in England as well. Poch, loved by Tottenham fans. And he ended up winning the Chelsea fans over as well. Just about. But he he is well liked. So I mean he's a punchy candidate to go for. I just don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. I think the FA go down the same route as they did with Southgate, and I do think I think Carsley's got a very big shout. I think hiring from within, it does feel like having stumbled across Southgate in the way that they did, and it having worked in the way that it did, it feels like that transition between youth level and the senior setup, managers who have been coaching teams in a certain way, like Cole Palmer and Anthony Gordon, do they get into this squad? Do they eventually make this England squad without the experience that they had last summer? Like, does Cole Palmer start the season for Chelsea in the way that he does without the summer that he had with the under-21s? I'm not so sure. I think these are things that need to be considered. So yeah, I feel like the FA will go down potentially the Lee Carsley route. Or the Steve Cooper route. Well, maybe not Steve Cooper because he obviously got that job with Leicester. But yeah, that's where I feel. And yeah, that's what I feel might happen. I don't know. Yeah, I kind of back it. Like, I know it's not the most inspired choice, but I think what England need is just someone who can set that team up.
Well, and
in
also if they're
way.
looking at the trophy celebrations yesterday and they're thinking, do we go down this road? They've got Luis de la Fuente as an example. They can see Scaloni lifting it with Argentina in 2022. It doesn't always have to be these elite managers who very rarely want to work in international football anyway that come in and do the job. Personally, I go with Pochettino, but I can see the claim of Lee Carsley. But most importantly, we want to hear what you guys think. Who would you want to be England's next manager? Would you rather it was Southgate? That is not a bad argument in and of itself as well. Get in the comments, guys. Do you think the lack of options means that Southgate is, in fact, the best option? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and we will catch you soon. Bye-bye.